Yeah. Right, so I'm starting this process with an invoice. So I've got an invoice here, it's got a nice title on it, but we don't care about that. But it's got an invoice number, it's got the customer's registered number, so they're registered with a website, whatever. It's got their address details, and it's got the date that we printed this invoice, or we did this sale. Okay? It's also got a list of the items that they bought, and some sort of price, the total. Alright? So looking at that, it's this document that will help me produce this. So I've, on the right hand side of the board, written up the information that an invoice contains. Okay? So I've just written out all those things again. So I've got invoice number, customer number, the address, the invoice date, and then I've got these, which are the repeating things. So I've put a little R next to them all. Okay, so you've got like, I don't know, bits of cards, you've got glue, you've got scissors, whatever they're buying from yours, yeah? But they're going to repeat, you're going to have multiples of these things. Yeah, everyone happy with that?
Yeah. No.
So, no. Right. In your basket, you can have more than one thing.
Oh, so it'll repeat in that section, not a repeat of that.
Not repeat of the item, but you're saying like, there will be several item codes, there'll be several descriptions of items. You just think about it.
There's only like one.
Yeah, that's right. These are all one. They're only going to be there once. Yeah, that's important. Now, we give this a name, so I'm calling this invoice. But we cannot store the data like that. Okay? We need to make sure that we remove this repeating stuff. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to split our data across a number of tables in a database. Okay, and this process will hopefully allow us to link that all up. Okay, right, I'm going to rub that off because that's going to get in the way. Well, I'll rub it off in a minute. Okay, so the first step we're going to go through is to put this in first normal form. Okay, this is what we call a normalised. You're an F. In the notes I've actually got a little diagram box that you can use, and I've actually got something else that you can use, and I'll get them out so you can have a play, and it'll help you do these. Just go across here and, like I say, you're the only one watching it, man. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to copy across the things that are just once. So I need to come up with a name, so I'm going to keep the name invoice. And I'm just going to say, right, okay then. Keep the noise down a bit. Alright. Get some head knocking going on. Right, so I'm just copying those over. Customer number, customer address.
I'll just say cheaper.
What is your name?
Normalised form. That's what it means. Unnormalised form. It means we've got repeating data, which is no good in our database. Right. The other piece of information that doesn't repeat is the total. So we can copy that. So I've just moved all the things across that are just there one. So on my little invoice, that was all the stuff that's up here and that. Okay. Right, the next step is to identify what this data is. We need to come up with a name for it. Okay, so when I did this before, I came up with a name, and it sounds a bit lame. I just called it the detail of the invoice. Yeah, invoice. It is really, it's the detail. This is just like the stock stuff. This is actually what's been sold. Yeah. So I'm going to call it invoice detail. You don't need to write all this down because I have actually got this. So don't worry about writing this down because you're going to do it for your database. So you don't need to write. I've got a sheet you can have. Right. So I'm going to write down in my invoice detail that repeating stuff. But I need to try and identify which of these items is going to be unique for me. So I'll do that in a minute. So I'm going to say, right, okay, let's have item code again. Let's have item description. So So all the things that I've put an R next to, item price, quantity, I can't spell that, and the price. Okay? Right. In order, just go past Kim. Ben.
It's embarrassing. Right, we've got that out of the way.
You should just put your hood up.
Oh,
then no one would have known it was.
Just like
Right. Where we got that, we need to be able to link this back. So we need to know that this is the detail for this invoice. So what we do is we make a copy. We add in the invoice number. And we put that down as a key. Okay, well we could put it down as a foreign key as well, to be honest. Now, what that does is that if I'm going to look up some invoice detail, I will be able to link back and find out what the invoice was for, and I should be able to link to the customer because of that number. Alright? In order for this to work properly, I also need, because I can't have, this has to be unique, I have to make a judgment on another thing in here that when combined with the invoice number will be unique again. Right, what this would look like in reality, if I had an invoice table in a database, I'd have this invoice number and I might have customer number plus some other data. I'm not going to show it all. So for invoice 1 will be for customer 4, 5. No, my brain does it. Invoice 2 will be for customer 6. Invoice 3 might be for customer 5 again. So they might have another order that they do. And so on. Okay, so that's what that will look like. This invoice detail will look like this. And again, I'm not going to put all of the info down. So when I build this in a database, I'm going to have invoice number. I'm going to have item code. And obviously a load of other stuff. Change the pen down. Right, so what would this look like? So I would have, let's say I'm looking at invoice 1. I don't need to put the customer down because I've got that link. I can link back. Beck, are you paying attention? Well, let's say I bought item 10, but also on this invoice I bought item 11. Alright, so I've got 2 items that I bought when I did this order. If I was to just use invoice number, it would not be unique. And it has to be unique. Alright, because it's appeared twice. But if I combine with the item code, that number is unique. So let's have a look at what invoice 2 might have had in it. It might have had an item 11. Okay, but together they're unique. So the code on its own isn't unique and the invoice number isn't. But if I put them together, they become unique. Alright? So I've made a link back to that.
What if they ordered the same thing twice though? Like exactly the same thing twice?
What if you're going to have that situation, when you come up with your item codes, everything you put in has to have a unique item code. That's the only difference it makes. I've gone with a quantity, so if I order 10 pairs of scissors, I'll just say item code and then 10 of them. But if you want to do it like that, and that's a decision you've got to make, do you go with a quantity system, or do you say, well, every time I put a piece of stock on the system, I'll just generate a new code, which you can do. It's not a problem. So it's up to you to decide.
Can you do it on price? Link on price?
No, because that would work. Because you might have different items with the same price in the same order. Alright. Okay, so we've solved one problem. We've got rid of repeated information, but we've actually generated another problem. Right. We're in first normal form, but we've got to try and put this into second normal form. Now, when we look at this is fine. There's no issues with this, so we're just going to move that straight across. Okay, so I'm going to go invoice, and that is in it, invoice number. In fact, I'm going to be lazy and I'm just going to do that. So those ones just keep going. Okay, and again, that is still my key. But with this one, because we've got two keys, and you always get that when you do this repeating thing, you always get this two key problem. We've got all these items, and we need to say, and we work through these 4 items, and we say, really, do they need to be in this invoice detail? Have we got information that's going to get repeated, that we can get rid of? Right? And the way to think of it is taking one thing at a time. If the invoice number changes, does the description of the item change? So if I was buying a tin of beans, and then Beck went and bought the same tin of beans, the description would stay the same. So what we're saying is that the description is not related to that and that. It is really only related to the code. So I'm thinking that I've got something else that I need to store separately. And it's to do with items. So I'm going to come up with a name. I'm going to say, right, I'm going to call this thing items. I'm going to make a copy of the item code. But I'm going to put item description in there. Okay, so I've moved that one. Looking at the next one, same thing. If someone else buys the same product, will the price change? Unless you're being some sort of real gig. And you're like saying, oh, I don't like the key, I'm going to charge you different. Right, so that is going to move into there. Now, the problem with what we've got to do is that it's so simple, you could probably say, I'm going to have a set of data about items, I'm going to have a set of data about customers, and a set of data about orders. So you could actually do this from scratch and build it direct. But we're going through the process. To show the example, we understand the process. Okay? Right, so we've got item price. So that one's moved. Right, if we look at quantity, looking at the item code, it's going to depend on that because it depends what item I bought. But actually, it's going to depend on the invoice as well. So a different person might buy a different number. So that's going to stay here. And looking at the price, now what I didn't show you is that this price was those two numbers multiplied together. Alright? So the price here is actually dependent on the item and the order number. So that stays. So I'm going to make invoice detail up and I'm going to show what it's now got in it. So I've ended up with invoice number and item code, quantity and price. Okay, so currently I've gone from having one set of data to 3 sets of data, and the general rule is, yeah, because I didn't write them all down because I was being lazy. I'm going to have to copy them over in a minute. The general rule is whenever you split something off and make up a new set of data, you need something to link back. So this has got a link. What's really great about this is that I can search my database and I can say, right, I want to know who bought this item. So I can look back at all the invoices to find that item code, and then I can use the invoice numbers of that list to find what customers. Find out where they live, go and rob them. Alright, if I was like an unscrupulous shop employee. Okay, you're with me so far. The process is easier to do with your own system, because you understand what you're trying to do better. Yeah. Right, I'm just going to rub that out because it's in my way. Right. Now Mr. Lazy's now got to write all this out. Customer address. Invoice date. Oh, why are my pens all thrown out? I'm told. Right, so I've got 3 sets of data, or 3 tables of data. I've now got to make sure it's in third normal form. In the exam, what they tend to do is they'll give you some data and they'll say, put it in third normal form. And it is so obvious that you'll be able to just do it. Alright? But you'll see when we do the exam questions. I'm just going to change pen again. We're purple now. Hope that one works a bit better. Right. The third normal form is where we're looking for issues where something that isn't the key looks like it's acting as a key for other data. Alright? So in here, we've got no problems. In here, we've got no problems. So those two just copy straight across. Okay, as they are. So we end up with invoice detail, and we end up with items. But this one, the customer's address, unless there's some dodgy geezer, isn't going to keep changing. It's not related to the invoice number, it's related to the customer number. Okay? So, invoice data is related to the invoice, and total's related to the invoice, and customer number is related to the invoice. So they're fine, but the customer address isn't. So we've actually got some more data here. What might we call this? New data. Customer. Keep it short, if you can. Alright, so I've got invoice. So I'm going to keep all the invoice stuff. So I've got invoice number, which was my key. I've got customer number, which tells me what customer did it. I've got the date the invoice was generated, or the sale. And I've got the total for it. Now, for argument's sake, you might not need to do that because you can generate that whenever you generate an invoice, but it might be nice to store it. It's up to you. So I've identified that I've got some customer information. So I've got another set of data called customer, which has got a key called customer number, and it contains the customer's address. Okay, so that allows me, so I've gone from one set of data to 4 sets of data. And in my database, I'll build these separately. And it allows me to link them up. So what I've done is I've built a relationship between all the data sets, which would look like this. So we'd have invoice, if I could spell it would look like this. Invoice links to a customer, and we do what we call an entity relationship diagram, and we say like one customer can have many invoices because they can do lots of orders. The invoice links to invoice detail. Okay, and one invoice can have many items in invoice detail because I showed you that little diagram. And one item can appear as the detail to many invoices. So we end up with this little diagram. And you'll be able to draw this at the end. Okay, and that's called an entity relationship diagram. Or an ER diagram. Okay. Now, when we're at this point, because we've done like the major work, we've done the structuring work, you might start thinking, well actually I want some other stuff in my invoice data, I want some other stuff in my item data. But to keep this simple, we didn't bother putting them on, because they would have just moved around in the same way. So it's at this point where you say, right, add some extra stuff in, so I can finalise what's going to go in my database. For the customer, obviously you can have name and stuff like that, but you can't have things like that, because they're not atomic. Atomic means these represent one piece of information. A customer address has got lots of information, because you've got postcode in there, you've got house number, street name, town. That's separate information. If you leave it like that, it makes it really difficult to search. Yours is going to be important, Reece, because you're doing you might want to like work out where you're going to do deliveries. So you might need to search on postcode, or you might need to search on district or whatever. Alright. So it's very important that we split up separate information. So you wouldn't have customer name, you'd have forename and surname. You might have title, but you might not want to put that. It doesn't matter.
Why is it limited to the third normal form? Why? I see potential for a report.
Oh, there are more.
Right.
But we only need to go to third normal form to make sure our database is going to work.
Okay.
Traditionally, that's as far as you need to go. For the exam, that's as far as you need to go. There are loads more, but they start involving data warehouses and large-scale data, where you've got databases related to databases. So you've got all this data in a database, and you've got another database which has got all the data in, and you link those together. And then what you do is you take lots of databases and link them all together. So it gets really complicated. If you go off to do, you're not doing that, but if you went off to do computing, you could specialise in databases if you wanted a hole in your head. Unfortunately, they're very useful, databases. Okay, I find them very boring, but they are very useful. Everything's driven by databases. Right, so what I need you to do, right, so if I just stop that, I'm blathering on there.